Live from the MGM Grand Tap Sports Bar at the beautiful MGM Grand here in Las Vegas, it is Behind the Book, the sports betting series sweeping the nation. Gil Alexander from the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Jay Rude, Vice President of Race and Sports here at MGM Resorts International. Jay playing hurt today.
A little bit, yeah, a little under the weather.
You gonna make it?
Yeah, I'm gonna make it. We're gonna do this all in one shot. Let's get it over with.
Because you have no choice.
No.
We are going to talk 2 NFL games and, of course, the 2 college football games, the National Football Championship semis, the playoffs, the NFL games between the Panthers and the Falcons, playoff implications at Atlanta, and then Jacksonville at Tennessee, playoff implications there as well. And then, of course, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama, Clemson, all on today's Behind the Book, brought to you by the Play MGM app, live from the MGM Tap Sports Bar. It is the Behind the Book Sports Betting Series, live from the MGM Grand Tap Sports Bar. Gil Alexander from VSiN, Jay Rude from MGM Resorts International, the VP of Race and Sports here at MGM. Jay, it is Week 17 in the NFL.
The screwy week.
Squirrely, as I like to call it.
Yes. It's interesting because big unknowns loom large here.
Yes, big unknowns. In this game, though, no motivational issues to consider. 2 teams that really need to win this. Carolina at Atlanta. The Falcons are favored by 4. Seems like a point too many to me. And now follow me here. Carolina, they could fall as high as 2 in the NFC or as low as 5. If they win here at Atlanta and New Orleans loses, Carolina will win the NFC South. If that is also accompanied by a Minnesota loss, Carolina will get the number 2 seed and a first-round bye in the playoffs. However, if Carolina wins and New Orleans wins, Carolina is a wild card. They'd be number 5 in the NFC. If Carolina loses outright, they're number 5. Atlanta, only way they can lose here, well, they can lose the game, but the only way they can be knocked out of the playoffs is if they lose and Seattle wins, or if Seattle loses at all. Atlanta wins and they're in. Got all that?
Got all that. Ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, that's for sure.
What he said.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the line here for both teams. Like you said last week in our spot, is that you predicted that the Falcons could be the team that's going to be on the outside looking in when it's all said and done. So
thank you for remembering.
They've got to get some business done here at home. They've been considerably better at home than they have on the road. Mm-hmm. I think in this particular spot, it's going to be a pros versus Joes situation. We're going to have the pros all over Carolina because I think there's probably a little bit of a value play there at the +4 because probably a lot of them have it, maybe 3.5 or, like I said, 3.7. They get really granular. So, but I think home cooking, all the public's going to be on the Falcons at home.
Home cooking. So pros, the sharp bettors, if you will, on Carolina, and I do think there's an extra point here. I thought this would be 3. The Joes, who, Jay, in common parlance is the public bettors, they're going to probably back the Falcons here at -4. You think it stays at 4 before kickoff?
You could see this drop down to 3.5 maybe, I think.
Okay, but not to 3.
Depends on how heavy the pros get involved.
Okay, big game. Carolina at Atlanta. The Falcons favored by 4. Week 17 in the NFL. Behind the Book for Week 17, brought to you by the Play MGM app. Gil Alexander and Jay Rude from the MGM Grand Tap Sports Bar here at the MGM Grand Hotel Casino. All right, so Week 17, Jay, squirrely. It is very strange. First of all, the NFL moved 5 games from the early slot to the late slot, meaning the afternoon slot. There's no night game. So everything's slotted in 2 time positions, and no games in the first affect teams' playoff possibilities in the second.
Right.
So loosely correlated parlays not in play this year.
Non-existent.
However, you do have situations where teams have nothing to play for. The Jacksonville Jaguars are at Tennessee. Jacksonville is locked into the number 3 position in the AFC no matter what they do here. So you look and you find out what's Doug Marrone doing. At least in public, head coach Doug Marrone is saying, we're playing everybody against Tennessee. Tennessee, with a win, they're in the playoffs. If they lose, they're out unless both the Chargers and Bills also lose.
Yeah, I don't think Jacksonville, being the team that they are and the experience that they have, can really pass on an opportunity to gain some sort of playoff experience,
I think you're right,
which this game is going to provide them. So I think they need to go in there and prove that they can handle a team that's desperate to get a win, like a playoff team, And I would be reluctant if I was a coach to tell my guys to take your foot off the gas in this particular matchup. But again, week 17, if Bortles, your franchise quarterback, gets hurt, then they're going to second guess you, all week long going into your wild card game.
I think you're right too, especially when you come off laying such an egg against San Francisco the previous week. You have a team in Jacksonville that's not used to being in the postseason. They need all the good vibes, if you will, that they can get going into postseason play. And file away what Jay just said about Bortles. I'm not sure you want to bet on Blake Bortles come January.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have any sample size.
We don't.
But the other thing that we haven't mentioned is, like you said, none of the games correlate with each other.
Right.
But the second halves could be pretty dang interesting.
Yes, second halves could be interesting.
You might see like twice the size of spreads in the second half than you would in the first half if some of these games sort of get out of hand.
Yeah, and Titans, by the way, 3.5-point favorites in this game with a total of 41.5. And that applies to, let's say, a Pittsburgh this week. They look up at the scoreboard. New England is crushing in their game. Maybe at halftime, Pittsburgh says, you know what, everybody off the field. Here's your second stringers, and your second half lines are going to be completely different, not derivative at all of what the full game line would have been.
And end game is going to be pretty interesting too. I would imagine end game is going to have some heavy suspension periods.
It's going to be fascinating. This game, once again, Jacksonville, 3.5-point favorites at the Titans. Titans need it. Jacksonville with nothing to play for, but according to their head coach, they'll use all their players. It's our favorite segment here on Behind the Book, the sports betting series. Gil Alexander, Jay Rude. It's called Ask the Pro, where we take your questions for Mr. Rude. You ready to answer one?
Absolutely. I mean, you get targeted a little bit here and there.
I do.
Here and there.
This one's more for you, though.
All right.
Jay, with the NFL playoffs approaching and the action becoming more concentrated, meaning the betting action, should we expect to see more frequent movement on the lines and totals, or does it stay about the same?
It stays about the same. I mean, when you get to the playoffs, we've got a huge sample size of the entire season. Very rarely will we see a game, run 2-3 points in the playoffs. That only happens when we hang the Super Bowl sometimes in the last few years. So totals are pretty tight. The only thing that can be really influential is the weather on some big movement in the line, because you're going to get more money on both sides of the game on these games because there's fewer options for the player.
And week 17, though, just kind of throw that out. That doesn't apply to anything.
No, week 17 is an anomaly. It's its own little beast that you have to contend with. Like right before kickoff, we could have 4 or 5 games that move very significantly. If somebody's pulled or a group of players are pulled, if the Cowboys, like we were talking earlier off camera, want to take a look at younger players, then you're going to have some significant movement. And whoever gets that information first usually benefits from it.
And you are in no better advantageous position than anybody else to get that information.
Not in the world that we live in now,
No.
Tweets and whatever's out there.
Volatile scoring, volatile results in week 17. Are you looking for
significant decisions, though, for some people?
Significant decisions. You're taking teasers, I would imagine, as always.
As always.
Be careful. Every other week, teasers are great. Maybe not the week to do teasers because of that disparate nature of all the results. Ask the Pro every week right here on Behind the Book. Love taking your questions on the Twitter sphere and throughout social media. Please do so throughout the playoffs as well. With all the talk about Week 17 here on Behind the Book, the sports betting series here from MGM Grand's Tap Sports Bar, we, of course, are bearing the headline, Jay. It is the College Football National Championship semifinals, the 4th year of this. And we have 2 games on New Year's Day, one in the afternoon, one at night, the first of which, Georgia and Oklahoma, the number 2 and 3 teams in the country, actually reversed, respectively, 3 and 2. Oklahoma opened as the favorite in this game by a tick. The money has moved it to Georgia now, -1.5, with the total at 60.5.
The sharp money.
The sharp money. What do you expect to happen between now and kickoff, though?
I think between now and kickoff, we're going to see nothing but Oklahoma money come from the Joe Q public.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia has been not respected, overlooked by the public for most of the year. In a couple of spots they played them, but for the most part, ignored by the public. Oklahoma, they have the flashier quarterback, the more well-known quarterback, obviously Heisman-winning quarterback. I think this is just an absolute spot where the public is going to not be able to get enough money down on Oklahoma. So
Public-
we're going to be huge Bulldog fans.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Public loves offense. They love points. They love a Heisman Trophy winner in Baker Mayfield. I'll try to do this off the top of my head. Baker Mayfield, 71% completion rate this year, 4,340 yards passing in his Heisman year, 41 touchdown passes, 5 picks, 41 against 5, and then 11.8 yards per attempt, which would shatter the FBS record that he set last year himself. But Oklahoma's never seen a defense like Georgia has, much like Georgia has never seen an offense like Oklahoma has.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, of the 2 games, this could be probably the most entertaining game to watch.
Yeah.
For sure. If it wasn't going to mean so much, because like we was talking about, Week 17 can be like, there's going to be insignificant decisions on some of those games. There's going to be some significant decisions on these 2 games for sure.
Absolutely. Georgia and Oklahoma, the first of 2 national championship semifinals. New Year's Day, that's Monday in the afternoon. Come on down and bet at any of the MGM Resorts properties here on the Strip. Behind the Book brought to you by the Play MGM app. Gil Alexander, Jay Rude. Jay, I don't know if you know this, but Alabama is playing Clemson in the college football national semis. Did you know that?
One of the games that actually means something this week.
It sure does. Obviously, with the pros being so squirrely in Week 17, the college football playoffs just taking center stage. We talked about Georgia, Oklahoma. Alabama and Clemson now, the 3rd year. This is a trilogy. 2 years ago, Alabama wins the national championship 45-40 over Clemson. Last year behind Deshaun Watson. Last second play to Hunter Renfrow. Clemson gets it done 35-31. This is the 3rd part of that, obviously not in the national championship, but in the semis, money first, or at least the open. Clemson, a tick of a favorite. All the money on Bama. Bama's favored by a field goal here now.
Yeah, all the early sharp money's shown up on Bama. They've drove this up to 3. And I think we're going to be in the spot where it's the pros and the Joes versus the book. Because I think a lot of the Joe Q public is going to show up and bet Alabama in this spot, mainly because of the Watson factor. I think, Deshaun Watson is, looked really good with the Texans. They might think that this Clemson team is just a touch not as good as they were with him. And, the Alabama team's got Jalen Hurts. Going to be the 3rd time he's played in a big game like this.
Yep, true.
National championship stuff. Played really well this year. Played within himself. Not big guy, makes mistakes. He takes care of things. And Nick Saban can hurt. But so I think we're going to be really pulling for Clemson in this spot. Could go to 3.5. Maybe not.
Wow.
The good news is the early money isn't as significant and concentrated as the money over the next 4 or 5 days is going to be.
But you are more than suggesting. You are floating the possibility that this will go past 3 and that Alabama will be more than a field goal favorite.
Which doesn't mean anything, because I said the other game last week would go to 7 and it went down to 4.5.
Well.
So, that's why I'm on this side of the counter,
right,
managing liability and not handicapping.
We'll see if it does. Right now, as it is, Alabama favored by 3. I'm tempted to take Clemson with the points here. Alabama by 3, total 47.5 in one of the 2 college football national semis on Monday night, New Year's Day night, and of course the national championship on the 8th, a week later. Behind the Book once again from the Tap Sports Bar here at the MGM Grand. Gil Alexander from VSiN, Jay Rude, Vice President, Racing Sports, MGM Resorts International. Oh my God, that's a lot to say.
Yes, it is. Every single time it is.
Well, it's the first time on this show, Jay, just so you know. Stats of the week. Here's what I'm going to be looking at, and then we'll get to what you're looking at here from Behind the Book. The Seattle Seahawks beat the Dallas Cowboys, Jay, in Week 16 with 136 total yards of offense and 142 penalty yards. That's the first time since 1966. 1960 that a team has won with more penalty yards than total yards. It's unbelievable. And the Seahawks stay alive. They get in the playoffs this week with a win and a Falcons loss. What are you looking at from Behind the Book?
We're going to be looking at Week 17 total wins, season wins. Whether we have significant positions that we're going to want to maybe maneuver the point spread or the money line to either strengthen our position or try and recuperate where we're possibly going to lose. Like the Patriots are at 12.5. They're looking pretty strong, candidate to get their 13th win this week. So we might, get them to, bet the money line on the Jets just a little bit or something like that.
I see.
We'll be maneuvering around. Same with the Titans. A couple other ones out there. Thankfully, we don't have to do anything with the Cleveland Browns. We've got no shot at covering any of their numbers.
Yeah.
And we did pretty well because they were bet over in the preseason. Go figure that. But so that's what we're going to be looking at. That and of course weather, and then we got all the bowl games as well.
Yeah, Cleveland Browns, whose season win total I believe was 5, if I'm not mistaken.
It came down a little bit.
Came down a little. I don't know if you know this. They didn't win a single game, so that's not happening. But interesting that you manipulate.
A little bit, yeah.
You're a manipulator, Jay Rude.
Where the action is significant enough, yes.
Understood. Very interesting. So shading it, maybe giving you the temptation to bet the Jets on the money line in that particular game, as the Patriots are on the cusp of going over in their season win total. Behind the book, that does it for Week 17 in the NFL and the College Football National Championship semis. As always, for Jay Rude, VP, Race and Sports, MGM Resorts International. I'm Gil Alexander from the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Thanks so much for watching Behind the Book. As always, brought to you by the Play MGM app. Thanks so much for watching.